Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
This the monster from the swamps, Regis Rougarou Program.
Hey, what's up? This is King Carlos Molina, former IBF World Champ.
This is Michael, the Bounty Hunter, 2012 Olympian and your people's champ.
This is Charlie Edwards, flyweight champion of the world.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 190 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined by, well, last week he was 50 Cent. This week he returns as himself, the one and only Mr. Ayaz Sumra. Ayaz, how you doing?
I'm good, Joey. Yourself?
Very good, my friend. Very good. Right, let's dive straight into the review part of the show. We're going to start in Thailand at the City Hall in Chachoengseo. One fight to mention over here, Chayaphon Moonsri, 53-0 now. He defended successfully his WBC World Minimum Weight title against Tatsuya Fukuhara, who's now 21-7 with 6 draws. It was a technical decision after 8 rounds. I'm guessing there must have been a cut that made the fight end prematurely, but like I say, it went to the cards. Moonsri won the fight. I believe it was a rematch. I think the pair fought before. Leaving that one there, moving out now to Scunthorpe. That's what we do over here. We go from Thailand to Scunthorpe at the Baths Hall. Topping the bill, Kurt Garvey took on Dex Spellman. This one was for Garvey's English light heavyweight title. There's quite a good mix at the kind of English level in Britain, you know, the likes of Miles Shinkwin, the likes of, you know, Dex Spellman, Kurt Garvey, Liam Conroy. There's a few decent fighters there on that domestic level. But anyway, this was a good fight from what I've heard. I didn't get to see it. I don't believe it was televised. Dex Spellman actually got cut on his eye in the 5th round, but he managed to win unanimously. It's a little bit of an upset there. His record now 16-2. Kurt Garvey loses the belt now 12-3. Dex Spellman obviously had to come through quite a tragic thing actually when he fought. I believe it was about a year and a half ago, something like that. Now, obviously, you know, he fought the. My memory's so terrible. Who did he fight? Dex Spellman. God, this is terrible on my part here. I really apologise. There's going to be a short little delay while I actually pull up his record. Like I say, we don't like to do this. It's all in the mind over here. He took on, and he actually lost the fight, didn't he? It was to Scott Westgarth. That was the guy's name. So, obviously, RIP. That was back in, it was just a year and 4 months ago. So, yeah. About a year and a half, like I said. So a good win there for Spellman. Like I say, he's had a few demons really to overcome, and it seems like he's done that. Moving out now to China at the Wynn Palace Cotai in Macau. Fan Long Meng, the guy that beat Frank Buglioni in Monaco, he fought for the IBF Intercontinental Light-Heavyweight title. He took on a guy who was undefeated, Adam Deans, who was 17-0 with 1 draw. Obviously, Fan Long Meng, a good amateur, solid fighter, 14-0. He was actually down in the 8th round himself, but it's not the first time he's been down. He's been down a couple of times in his career, but anyway, he got up off the canvas, and like the other times he's been down, he managed to win. So it was a unanimous decision over 12 rounds there for Fan Long Meng. Moving out now to Southampton at the Central Hall, Joe Pigford moved to 16-0, a knockout in the 3rd round against Miguel Aguilar, who's really gone through the weights. I think he started at like super flyweight or something like that. He's now 11-59 with 1 draw. Moving out now to the Val Sports Arena in Cardiff, Wales, United Kingdom. 2 fights to mention over here. Craig Evans managed to beat Stephen Ormond. That was a rematch there. Craig Evans 20-2 with 2 draws. It was for his WBO European lightweight title. Stephen Ormond 27-6. Craig Evans won the first fight. This time it went the 10 rounds. Can't remember the method how he won it in the first one, but you know, he won once again. He had a point deducted in the last round. A lot of people actually felt that it was a robbery, people were saying. I didn't see the fight. I think it was on Box Nation. I've actually unsubscribed from Box Nation after many years of loyalty. I just feel like, you know, they're really on their last legs, it would seem. They don't seem to be getting much fights from from overseas, those kind of fights that they used to pull in, the Mayweather fights, the Pacquiao fights, the Canelo fights, they all seem to have just evaporated, and now we're getting MTK shows. So yeah, it's not really worth my subscription money, I think, after all that time. I was really hanging on, but anyway, yeah, forget about that. Stephen Ormond, some people thought he won, some people were saying the commentary was really bad. I completely cannot have a say on this because I haven't seen the fight, but a good win there for Craig Evans once again. Also on the bill, Jay Harris, he took on Angel Moreno, 19-3 with 2 draws, now 19-4 with 2 draws. It was a wide, unanimous decision win over 12 rounds. That one was for the EBU European flyweight title. Harris now 16-0. He really dominated him, which is quite impressive. Obviously, Moreno's last fight was against Charlie Edwards at the back end of March for Charlie Edwards' first WBC world title defense, and he was able to outpoint him. But he's a tough guy, Moreno. He doesn't really take many steps backwards, and Jay Harris has kind of just proved there that he's a real world-class operator, you'd probably have to say. I mean, he's won the European title, like I say, the proper European title, so the world scene is really the only step left for him. So some big fights for him. Sonny Edwards and him, I'd like to see that one. Moving out now to the Soul Bobber Casino in California, USA. A couple fights to mention here really quick. Hugo Centeno Jr., 27-2, took on Willie Monroe Jr., the battle of the juniors. Monroe 23-3, and Monroe quite expectedly won the fight unanimously over 10 rounds. I think that one was pretty obvious to guess that would happen. Friend of the show, Willie Monroe Jr., 24-3. I want to see him get his stuff back together really and try and have a bigger fight than that. But the shock of the card, friend of the show, Devon Alexander, 27-5 with 1 draw, Ayaz. He gets knocked out against Ivan Redkach, 22-4. He was down 3 times in the 6th round and out. I haven't seen the ending. I need to go and look at that on YouTube, but that's a shock defeat there for Devon Alexander. I mean, many would probably say he needs to throw the towel in on his career now after that. That is really, really shocking. Talking of shocking, let's move now to the Madison Square Garden in New York, USA. They're going to start here with the undercard. Solomon Sissoko, I believe he was a medalist in the 2016 Olympics, I think. He's been signed to AJ Boxing management team, I believe. He was on the undercard. He's now 9-0. It was a unanimous decision over 8 rounds against Vladimir Hernandez, who's now 10-4. Josh Buatsi, 11-0 now, a knockout in the 4th round against Marco Antonio Perabam. That was for Buatsi's WBA International Light-Heavyweight title. I mean, I felt like the stoppage was a little bit soft. I think he was inevitably going to win the fight by stoppage, but I feel like the stoppage was a little bit soft. I feel like his fights have been a little bit underwhelming. His matchmaking hasn't been too exciting. We're hearing all these great things. He would completely batter Anthony Yarde, stuff like that. Perhaps so. I'm not saying that he couldn't, but I'm just saying he's almost kind of going the same route in terms of opponents as Anthony Yarde, and I don't think people are getting onto him for that, Buatsi obviously had a decent amateur career, managed to medal in the 2016 Olympics. That's something Anthony Yarde didn't get close to doing. So, we need to just remember that one. I mean, he's fighting guys that don't seem to be putting up much of a challenge. They seem to be coming to lie down, and we're hearing he can be a world champion, he can unify divisions, stuff like that. So yeah, steady on with that one for me. Friend of the show, Josh Kelly, he was on last week. He failed to move to 10-0. It was a minor blemish, a draw actually, against Ray Robinson, the crafty southpaw from Philadelphia, 24-3. That was his 2nd draw. 2 in a row, obviously, he drew with Kavalauskas in his last fight. Kelly was actually cut on the eye, I believe it was in the 7th round, and then also cut on his other eye. I think it was the left eye first, the right eye last. It was in the 10th and final round, but like I say, a majority draw over 10. One judge scored it to Kelly and the 2 other judges had it 95-95. A bit of a hiccup there, to say the least, Ayaz, for Josh Kelly.
Obviously, it's a very good fight. Obviously, Josh Kelly, I mean, it was just a learning curve as well. So I think this draw has actually helped him a lot. But I think in this next fight, I think Josh Kelly will do very, very good.
Yeah, it's definitely not the end of the road, obviously. It's not a huge setback like the one we're going to talk about in a few moments. But, I think he's bitterly disappointed with himself. But I said it to him last week. I said, listen, you had a fight 5 weeks ago. You went 10 rounds. You're now flying out to New York. I think he arrived on Monday of fight week. If you're taking a fight really seriously, some people like to get over the other side of the world 2 weeks before their fight. They like to arrive there 2 weeks before fight night. And he rolled in with like 4.5 days till fight night. So I'm not quite sure about that. He took on his first southpaw here. And like I say, he'd done 10 rounds 5 weeks earlier. Didn't really have loads and loads of time to prepare. They didn't have the opponent announced. I think they were, kind of like... they weren't sure about who it was going to be. They were kind of going back and forth between about 3 or 4 different names, and it ended up being Ray Robinson. And I've got to say, for someone as careful and calculated as Adam Booth, this is a massive, massive, massive potential fighter here, Josh Kelly. A lot of people think he's a future world champion for sure. And now people are doubting that. I am quite surprised that Adam Booth took such a risk, Like, the camp was not ideal. The funny thing I should mention is he actually had the same amount of time to prepare as Andy Ruiz had to prepare for Joshua. So perhaps there's something in that if you look at it that way. But yeah, Josh Kelly, I felt like he did enough to nick it. The flashier work came from him. He did seem to tire as the fight went down the stretch. But yeah, he's pretty disappointed with himself. I think he just wants to lock himself away and get back in the gym, which is the right mentality. That's the mentality of a champion. But yeah, I don't think we should be too harsh. I think he did enough to win the fight. I've seen a few people out there, with a few different scorecards, and no one really, from what I've seen, has actually scored it to Ray Robinson. So I think he's quite fortunate. There was no luck for Josh Kelly on the cards there at all. We talk about bad judging, and I'm going to talk about bad judging in a moment. But yeah, there was no bad judging in that fight. It was really, really fair to Ray Robinson. So yeah, we'll leave that one there. Josh Kelly still remains the WBA International Welterweight Champion, 9-0 with 1 draw, minor blemish. He needs to get right back to it, though. I think perhaps a rematch would be good over here, especially. Moving up the card, Katie Taylor took on Delphine Persoon. Delphine Persoon, a part-time boxer, part-time policewoman in Belgium. It was for the IBF, WBA, WBC and WBO world titles at lightweight, of course. It ended up being a majority decision over 10 2-minute rounds in favour of Katie Taylor. She remains undefeated, 14-0 now, the undisputed lightweight champion. Delphine Persoon, 43-2, her second loss in 45 fights. So she has done very well to gather that record. But Ayaz, we believe, and we're not the only ones, we believe that Persoon should have got out the ring with another W on her record, and Katie Taylor should have been served up her first career loss there.
Yes, definitely. I personally feel Delphine won the fight. I don't think Katie Taylor did I don't think she did enough. Obviously, it's another robbery. For me, I think that's a robbery. Obviously, it's on an Eddie Hearn show. I personally think that they should give a rematch to her. And obviously, in the rematch, I still think Katie Taylor will still win somehow.
Yeah, I have to say it. I don't like to throw that R word out too often, that robbery word, but I feel like it fits here. Katie Taylor at the end of the fight was absolutely exhausted. Persoon, like I say, being a part-time boxer, part-time policewoman, she was banging Taylor properly, often as well. Like, Taylor's going back in straight line. She was just almost falling over her feet, lunging in. She was hitting Taylor with everything she could handle. Taylor actually showed a real good chin. I mean, she was taking shots flush. We've never seen her look, in that much trouble. In all of her 13 previous fights, she'd never been in that much trouble, even if you combined all the trouble she'd been in. Credit to Delphine Persoon. I felt like Delphine Persoon actually started the fight really well. I think she racked up the first few rounds. In the middle rounds, I felt like Katie Taylor started to take over a little bit. She is obviously the classier boxer, but Persoon's size and just her willpower, her aggression, she put everything into that. She fought like the hungrier of the two, and she definitely finished strong, despite kind of losing it a little bit in the mid-rounds, like I say. Look, I'm really annoyed by this. I feel like she has been put on such a pedestal, Katie Taylor. Most of these women don't have sponsors. Most of these women that she's boxed are part-time fighters. Even this lady here, Pursoon's a part-time fighter. She's actually a policewoman by trade. Katie Taylor just completely trains all year round. She's got all the sponsors like JD, I believe, and other big sponsors like that. She is one of the very few boxers out there in the women's side of the sport that don't have to work. You know, so all these people that she's been bashing up, collecting all these titles from, you just think, well, it's a mismatch. It's a complete mismatch, you know. The other lady hasn't had the time to prepare. The other ladies, you know, most of the time these ladies are actually fighting because they've got kids. You know, she's fought some South American ladies, and Mexican, stuff like that, and they've got kids. They've got 2 or 3 kids. You know, Katie Taylor doesn't have a family like that. She is just a complete boxer. She lives and breathes it. She spars with men. None of these women, it's a complete unlevel playing field. None of these women have got it easy like Katie Taylor. I'm not saying she's got it easy, but they don't have things the way they want. You know, they're always going to be the B-side. Katie Taylor's pretty much, you know, like in her own league in terms of like the I'm trying to look for the right word to describe it. She's like you know, privileged. These other boxers don't have those privileges. These other opponents that she boxes, they don't have the privilege of, you know, being able to train all the time, of you know, not having to work all the time to put food on the table. They don't have the sponsors. They don't even have the trainers. I think Katie Taylor's strength and conditioning team and stuff like that, they do a great job with her. You know, she's got Ross training her. He seems like a real good, you know, grounded trainer and stuff like that. All the backing, all the amateur experience, all that stuff. And like I say, Pursoon won that fight. And some people are saying, no, it was really close. It wasn't a robbery. I disagree. Remember, this is a 10-round fight. It's not a 12-round fight. In a 12-round fight, if you say, I think one of the ladies won it by, or one of the men, let's just say, because women don't do 12 rounds. So let's talk about men here, yeah? In men's boxing, obviously a 12-round fight, to say that someone won by 2 or 3 rounds, that really can go either way. There's 12 rounds. When there's 10 rounds, though, a 2 or 3 round swing is massive. So actually, if someone in your eyes wins by 2 or 3 rounds in a 10-round fight, that's a robbery if there's scores the other way. That is a robbery. You can't take those rounds away and give them to the other lady. That's a complete flat-out robbery. And that is what I saw. And it's a bit annoying because Katie Taylor, I mean, she's getting all these plaudits. You know, she's a good fighter. I'm not saying she's not. Don't get me wrong. But she's getting all these plaudits. She's beating up these women that are part-time boxers. She's got a Netflix documentary out there. She's on every Anthony Joshua undercard. She's boxing in America. You know, she's being pushed like no other. I mean, it's incredible. Eddie Hearn, his favoritism for her is off the charts. And, you know, I look at people like Callum Smith and I think, where's his push? Why isn't he being pushed like that? Callum Smith is, you know, he's got a good personality. By the way, Katie Taylor's got no personality. Okay, so if you want to say, oh, Callum Smith doesn't have a great personality because he hasn't really had the opportunity to come out and, you know, talk his way into a conversation, show what he's really like. Listen, Callum Smith, I can tell you from personal experience, he's actually a funny guy. Katie Taylor comes across as having no personality at all. You know, Callum Smith is a big punching knockout artist, could be the very best in the world at his weight. There's big fights like Canelo, there's big fights like Golovkin. Why isn't he being pushed? You know what I'm saying? Katie Taylor is pretty much the female equivalent to Anthony Joshua, the way she keeps getting pushed. All these world titles, honestly, it's really annoying, and it's so sad that Pursoon, a policewoman, has had to put all of her body through this. She fought the fight of her life, and it just gets ripped away. She got out of the ring crying. That's just disgusting. And then Katie Taylor says she fought like she won quite clearly in the post-fight interview. Complete fibs. There needs to be a review, actually. I'd like the WBC or any of the sanctioning bodies to get together and actually put that fight in front of a group of judges before you send Katie Taylor any belts. I mean, it's just the one belt that Pursoon had. So before the WBC send out the belt, put that fight in front of a group of judges, because that was disgusting. Ooh, anyway, moving back to the card, like I say. But I just want to say, last thing there, Katie Taylor showed so many flaws there. Remember, she had the close fight with Jessica McCaskill that people forget about. In my opinion, Chantel Cameron is all wrong for Katie Taylor. And people talking about the best 3 women in women's boxing, the pound for pound list, Cecilia Brackhouse, Clarissa Shields, Katie Taylor, no, don't have her number 3. She proved there that she's not the best lightweight in the world. No way. So she shouldn't be in the top 3. 3 or even 4 or 5 in the pound-for-pound rankings. Like I say, Chantel Cameron gives her a real fight. But that is about it for that one. I'm done with a rant there. Moving up the bill once again. Chris Algieri, 23-3 now, 24-3, a win against our very own Tommy Coyle, 25-5 now. Coyle, it wasn't to be for him in his 30th fight. Obviously, Coyle was down in the 4th round. A body shot had him in quite a bit of trouble, actually. I was very surprised that he got up from that and he managed to actually make it to the 8th round. It was a good effort from Coyle, we've got to say it. He seemed to hurt Algieri early on. He tried to force a stoppage. You know, he started the fight well, in all honesty. He probably won the first 2 rounds, but then he seemed to run out of steam, like I say. And the shot he hit Algieri with seemed to actually wake Algieri up. And, you know, he went on to dominate. And like I say, he forced Coyle to take that knee from the body shot. And, you know, he carried on. He showed the heart. He showed the bravery. He fought fire with fire. But like I say, the class of Algieri was just too much for Coyle. And the corner stopped it. Jamie Moore had to make the right decision. You know, which was very hard for him. Credit for him. It was the right decision, in my opinion. And yeah, Coyle was completely gutted, but he was out of his depth, and you know, he didn't disgrace himself. He put up a good effort. He showed lots of heart, and he accepts it. You know, he's gone back and said, I got outclassed. The guy was too good for me. I believe the pair sat down the next day in the hotel and had a chat about the fight. It's great to see this sportsmanship. We will look to try and speak to Chris Algieri at some point on this week's show. Hopefully guest number 1 or guest number 2. So yeah, I save most of the talking to that interview, but I just want to say Tommy Coyle came back from New York, and I believe a homeless shelter in Hull had been vandalized, broke into. I think they stole some money that had been raised for the non-profit organisation, and Tommy Coyle saw it, and he realised that the homeless shelter would have to actually close its doors to the homeless while they try and sort out this situation, and Tommy Coyle actually tweeted them and said, hey, if I can get someone round there to fix this within an hour and replace any stolen money, could it open again today? And they turned around and said yeah, and he actually went down there. I mean, he's there taking pictures of the damage being repaired by people that he brought in. He's there taking pictures with the staff. He's still got bruises and black eye and stuff like that. Credit to Tommy Coyle, what a man he is. I mean, you cannot dislike anyone like that. Completely full of class. Great man, great role model there. But yeah, leaving that fight alone, moving up now to Callum Smith against Hassan and Dam. Friend of the show, Hassan, 37-4 now. It wasn't to be his night. Callum Smith moved to 26-0, a knockout in the 3rd round for him. And Dam was down in the 1st round, the 2nd round, and the 3rd round. It was obviously a defence of Callum Smith's WBA Super World Super Middleweight title and his WBC Diamond Belt. It was inevitable, really. It was a bit of a waste of a training camp. As much as I do like Hassan and Dam, it was a mismatch. It was predictable. He moved up in weight. He was, he's way too small for super middleweight. He really is. And Callum Smith is probably the biggest super middleweight, or at least one of, in the division. Not to mention probably being number 1 or number 2 in the whole division. So yeah, we had to wait quite a long time after that Groves fight, and it was quite an underwhelming opponent. Again, I mentioned, I don't think he's been marketed well, Callum Smith. I think he should be a guy that they've made documentaries about. He should be a guy that's been on the Graham Norton show. He should be on the game show, A League of Their Own. Just to get that exposure. He's a cool guy. Not many people know about his personality. He's got a good personality. He says all the right things. He's a all-round good guy. He's a nice guy. He's funny, and he can fight like hell. So it's a real shame he doesn't get much more accolades, and he doesn't really have the profile of some of the much lesser fighters. Like Conor Benn, for example. I mean, Conor Benn's way more well known. I know he's getting it obviously from his dad, but there's other people out there like O'Hara Davies. I'd say he's got a bigger fan base than Callum Smith. I mean, that's up for debate. I think possibly that could go down as the most idiotic statement ever, but people are talking about O'Hara Davies. There's a lot of fighters out there. What I'm saying, just using O'Hara as an example, there's a lot of fighters out there that are much lesser fighters with much bigger fan bases. That's all I will say. And moving up to the main event now, Anthony Joshua 22-0 against Andy Ruiz Jr., the late replacement. He's only had 5 weeks' notice for the fight. He boxed the other week against Dimitrenko. I think he made Dimitrenko quit on his stall. And in came Andy Ruiz Jr., like I say, 32-1. The one loss came to Parker on points, a fight that really could have gone either way. So you could look at it as he, was an undefeated fighter going into this fight. The only thing is, when Parker beat him, Parker went on to really cash in on his title. He had the big fight with Joshua in Cardiff. He had the big pay-per-view fight with Dillian Whyte, whereas Andy Ruiz Jr. completely fell off the face of the earth, disappeared, and he became, in my opinion, the forgotten man of the heavyweight division, a real top contender that no one talked about. No one had him in their top 10 or top 15 lists. And credit to him. He stepped in, like I said, it was for the IBF, IBO, WBA Super and WBO World title. Ruiz himself was on the deck in the third round. Joshua was down twice in the third round, and then, of course, down twice in the seventh before the referee stopped it. I just want to whiz through this fight real quick. The first round I felt was quite a close round. It was a bit of a feel-out round, probably a Ruiz round, actually, because he was the guy letting his hands go in combinations. Only once or twice he did that, but AJ was just popping out a jab here and there. He was on the back foot. Ruiz was the aggressor. It was certainly a Ruiz round for me. The second round was another feel-out round. Barely anything landed, to be honest. I think Joshua probably controlled most of the action with his jab once again. He did seem a little bit hesitant. He did seem a little bit tentative, and Ruiz wasn't giving Joshua much of a target to hit. He kept himself nice and tight. He judged his distance really well. So Joshua round, I think, probably in that second. In the third round, I couldn't believe my eyes. It was incredible. Ruiz was down for the first time in his career. He was caught trading with Anthony Joshua. He wanted to take the chance, and credit to him, because they were trading off, and he thought, yeah, this is a chance to draw Joshua in, and he got caught with a left hook. It was a big shot. He went down heavy. He got straight back up. Joshua went in for the kill, and then he got caught. Down went Joshua, and he was in so much trouble. He got beat to the floor, and then he got back up, of course, and got put down again heavy, and he was completely out on his feet. He was completely done. It's a shame, because Ruiz seemed to step off the gas, and AJ actually wobbled back to his corner. His legs were completely gone. I couldn't believe my eyes. I actually felt sick. It was really weird. My whole chest and back started, it went all tight. It was really weird. I couldn't believe it. My hands were shaking. My heart was beating. I'm not quite sure why. It was just like, whoa. I just couldn't believe what I'd seen. The fourth round was a nothing round. It was probably a Ruiz round. I mean, Joshua was in his corner at the end of the round, totally looking exhausted. Ruiz didn't really do much, though. He didn't try and step on the gas. The fifth round, again, I'd probably say was a nothing round. It was a real slow-paced round. Ruiz seemed to kind of tire himself. Joshua looked a little bit gun-shy. The sixth round, a clear Ruiz round. He was walking Joshua down. He was hitting Joshua with body shots, and Joshua was dropping his guard. He seemed exhausted. It was quite shocking even still. But again, Ruiz hadn't stepped on the gas. He kind of gave Joshua round 4, 5 and 6 to recover, really. The sixth round, like I say, went to the body quite a bit, actually, so perhaps not. And then in the seventh round, like I say, Joshua, the first time he got dropped was a heavy accumulation of shots, and the second one was where Joshua actually spat out his gum shield. He was trying to buy time. I counted 20 seconds from when Joshua first went down. There was 20 seconds before the referee waved it off. Joshua didn't show that he wanted to carry on in that time. He very blatantly spat the gum shield out intentionally to try and buy time. And you know what? The referee had some big balls to stop a fight of that magnitude like that. I was really shocked that the referee did it. And credit to him, because there's a lot of referees that would be too terrified to stop a fight like that. I mean, people are going to compare Fury against Wilder. When Fury went down, he did beat the count, but obviously the referee Jack Reese gave him a bit of a chance to move left and right. But when he did that, of course, it was going over 10 seconds. It was probably 15, 16, 17, 18 seconds he gave him. But in that time, he did show the intent to carry on. He was running left and right. He was jogging. He was showing great body language. He wanted to carry on, and it's Jack Reese's fault for giving him that time. He didn't need to say walk left and right. That was his choice, not the fighter's choice. Here, Joshua spat out his gum shield. He made that choice himself. he went back to his corner. His body language was all wrong. He didn't look like he wanted to know. A lot of people are calling him a quitter. I'm certainly not calling him that. I'm just saying he didn't really do himself any justice. He didn't try to, prove his point, saying that he wanted to carry on. He didn't show anything like that. And credit to the referee for waving it off. He's the man in charge of the fight, and he showed big balls to do that in such a huge, multi-million-pound fight like that. But yeah, credit to Andy Ruiz Jr. Has a complete upset here. One of the very biggest upsets we've seen in boxing. Forget about just recent times, but in history.
It's basically like similar Buster Douglas versus Mike Tyson and Anthony Joshua versus Andy Ruiz. Everyone thought that Mike Tyson was going to smash Buster Douglas up, and Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson. It's the same thing. A lot of people are saying Joshua quit. I don't think he quit the fight. I personally think he wasn't mentally ready. A lot of people are saying that he wasn't feeling too good in the fight during the fight week, and that he wasn't feeling too good during the fight, and therefore Andy Ruiz beat him. But I mean, it's a good performance. It's a one huge upset. Now this fight with Deontay Wilder, I think is personally over now, right?
Well, again, everything seems a little bit unclear. As far as we knew, there would be a rematch clause, and the fight would the rematch would probably favour Joshua again. I remember Dillian Whyte didn't want to sign on the dotted line because even in the rematch, if he was to beat Joshua, in the rematch he'd still have to give the lion's share of the percentage to Joshua. That's what prevented that fight from happening. I think they would have done no different with Ruiz. He's probably going to have to be the B-side once again for the rematch, should it happen. And I'm guessing there's other stipulations, like the fight's probably now got to happen in the UK rather than the US, like the first fight. That's what Eddie Hearn said in the ring straight afterwards. There's a rematch clause. He confirmed that. He said the fight's going to happen in the UK. Andy Ruiz, though, when he got interviewed the next day, I think it was outside the hotel or whatever, and it was with Sky Sports, and he said he's still pinching himself. He can't believe what happened. He seemed like he didn't really want to commit to anything. He didn't want to say, oh, yeah, the rematch is definitely happening. They was even trying to say, if the rematch happens, where will it happen? Will it be UK? Will it be America? Will it be Mexico? He really didn't seem like he wanted to commit to anything solid. He said, I need to speak to my promoter, Al Heyman, or my manager or advisor, whatever, Al Heyman. I need to talk to my team. He didn't want to give anything away. He was keeping his cards close to his chest, which kind of makes me think, are they going to try and buy their way out of this rematch clause or what? It is very unclear, and it's all a bit of a guessing game. I don't know anyone inside his camp. No one's told me anything. A lot of people are saying, are the IBF going to strip him because they did that to Tyson Fury when he had to honour a rematch clause, when he had to give Vladimir the rematch, which obviously never happened, and the IBF stripped him within 10 days. I've heard, again, this is not, I don't want to say this is gospel, but I've heard that the IBF mandatory is not due, so they're not going to do that. Apparently the WBO, their window period for a mandatory is due, and they haven't yet established a mandatory because Dillian Whyte's ranked number 1. I think Schwartz is number 2 or 3, and Tyson Fury's number 2 or 3. Those guys are fighting, but at the minute they haven't established a mandatory challenger. And apparently the president of the WBO has come out and said that he won't push the mandatory until after the rematches took place. So it seems like there's no roadblocks or anything like that. It doesn't look like he's going to have to vacate or anything. But I just want to quickly say, I mean, this was a big shock. There's a lot of people out there that like to see people foul, and we're not that kind of podcast. We're not those kind of people. I mean, we're Anthony Joshua fans, obviously. We want to see the Brits do well. We're not celebrating his loss or anything like that. I think he possibly was a little bit overrated in terms of people on Twitter actually saying he would knock out Wilder, he would, knock out Fury. He had a life and death fight with Klitschko. Tyson Fury completely schooled Klitschko. That, to me, was enough to say, hey, Fury's the man to beat. He won the belts. He didn't lose the belts in the ring. I could go on all day. He fought Wilder. He clearly beat Wilder, in my opinion, Fury. So, for me, Fury is the man, and this hasn't really changed that situation. If anything, it's proved the point even further. And I think the only thing I will say is, all those people on Twitter that seem to just worship Anthony Joshua, they've all gone quiet now, and they're trying to find excuses as to why he lost, and these are some of the excuses I've seen. I've heard that he was concussed after the knockdown in round 3. I've heard that he had an eye infection on fight week. I've heard that he was ill and Eddie Hearn forced him to fight to stop the show from falling apart. I've heard that he had a panic attack, rumours that are being put into the atmosphere by Anthony Joshua fans on Twitter that just can't accept the fact that he lost to the better man. The only man that's not making excuses, by the way, is Anthony Joshua himself and Eddie Hearn. The two guys that could come out with an excuse. And guess what? Everyone would believe it. Everyone would say, that's why he did it. That's why he lost. Okay, thank God. He's still the best heavyweight in the world. He only lost because of that. You know, they're not coming out with an excuse. So if AJ's not making excuses, no need for anyone to make one for him, especially people on Twitter. But yeah, Anthony Joshua actually handled himself excellently after the fight. He showed the true champion in him. He congratulated Andy Ruiz Jr. He had no argument with anything. He didn't make any excuses, and he handled himself actually very professionally. Probably the best post-fight interview I've ever seen him give. So credit to him. And like I say, it just seemed like in the fight, when the pair were exchanging, it was a bad thing for Joshua. Usually he likes to exchange. He's a big hitter. Andy Ruiz showed a tough chin, and he showed the quicker hands. And I think the hand speed really caught Joshua off guard. When the pair were exchanging, constantly Ruiz was getting the better of the exchanges. And, he beat him fair and square. He dropped him 4 times. And I just think if the rematch does happen, Ruiz is going to be more prepared, and he goes into that rematch knowing he can stop Joshua, he can knock him out, he can hurt him. And Joshua goes into this fight for the first time in his life, this rematch, he will go into it with doubt, thinking, whoa, I can lose to this guy. This guy knocked me out. This guy had me down 4 times. So actually, I'm not going to sit here and start saying who I reckon is going to win the rematch should it happen, if it happens. There's lots and lots of ifs and buts, like I said, in that situation. Now Heyman needs to make the decision what's going to happen next. But I just think that if the rematch does happen, we're going to probably see a better Ruiz Jr., folks. And Joshua, is he going to be better? There was nothing wrong with his camp. He had a great camp. Is he going to be better? I'm not quite sure. So I'm not going to sit here and say it's a 50-50. I think Joshua still probably goes in as the favourite. But let's have it right. I was having this argument with someone the other day. If Andy Ruiz Jr. was built like Joshua, we'd all be saying, wow, it's just because of the way he looks. People are saying, nah, he can't do it again, surely. Even though he did it once and he did it on short notice, he can't do it again, surely. It's just purely the way he looks. It just goes to show the heavyweight division, it's not about what your body looks like, it's about what you can fight like. And Andy Ruiz fought better on the night. And I feel like that's probably about it, actually. I don't feel like there's too much more to say. Credit to Andy Ruiz Jr. He's completely torn up the script of the heavyweight division. Joshua was overlooking this guy. Joshua was trying to plan a sit down with Tyson Fury to try and sort out a fight. They were trying to get Wilder in negotiations. They completely took their eye off the prize, and now they're being made to pay. The Wilder Joshua fight is no longer the big fight that it was. They both missed out. Wilder should probably be kicking himself as well, because he would have probably gone in there and stopped Anthony Joshua, especially if you look at the two guys' last performances. They say in boxing you're only as good as your last performance. Wilder completely starched Brazil, and Joshua's been dropped 4 times by Andy Ruiz Jr. So boy oh boy, it makes Joseph Parker's win over Ruiz look excellent, by the way. But yeah, Wilder, he missed a chance for the big payday. Joshua has took his eye off the prize and lost. And Fury's got the big contract with ESPN. It's just a shame, because when a mega fight presents itself, it needs to happen. It's never going to be the same again with Brook and Khan. We spoke about that many times, Ayaz. But Wilder and Joshua, now it's just not going to be as big, unfortunately. One of them has lost, and that's it. So it's a big blow for Eddie Hearn. It's a big blow for Joshua. It's a big blow for DAZN. It's a big blow for Sky Sports. And it's a shame, and it's the end of certainly for the moment, the cash cow's been knocked off his throne. I feel like that's probably all bases covered, Ayaz. Just the prediction league, I should just mention. The predictions, we didn't get off to a great start. We all agreed on all 3 outcomes. We all went with Algieri on points. That didn't happen. We all went with Smith by knockout. That did happen. And we all picked Joshua to win by knockout. Of course, that didn't happen. So 1 point out of 3 for all of us. We all start on 1. Myself, Ayaz, and the listeners. But that is it for the review part. Just before we wrap up part 1, the last thing to do is to welcome guest number 1. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the former WBO Super-Lightweight World Champion. It is, of course, Mr. Chris Algieri. Chris, welcome back on the show, sir.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you back on, Chris. So we last spoke in December. It was just after your return to the ring after that 2.5-year break. You revealed to us at the time that you had a little bet with yourself that if you gave away rounds in that first fight that you would probably just walk away and retire. Obviously, you won it. You won the fight handily. And then you boxed Daniel Gonzalez. And obviously, by looking at one judge's scorecard in particular, it seemed to be a close fight. Just before we get on to the Coyle win, how did you assess that performance there against Daniel Gonzalez?
First of all, I didn't think that was a close fight at all. I swept the first 7 rounds, no problem. I did have the flu that week, which definitely sapped my gas tank a little bit, but I had no worries about winning that fight. I knew going in that I had a guy in front of me that I could beat, even if I wasn't 100%. I went out there. I said to my trainers, like, I'm going to fight as hard as I can for as long as I can, because I really don't feel good, and I'm just going to, you just got to do it. And then when I got cut in the 7th round, that really kind of changed things up, because now, oh my gosh, now I got to really protect this eye, because I knew I had a date with Coyle coming up, a fight that was going to be very big, very important. Wasn't my favorite night or my best performance, but I got the job done.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, on Saturday night, you boxed Britain's Tommy Coyle. A lot of people over here hoped he could do it, but I think most of us kind of knew that you were levels above him, really. I want to ask you, do you go into fights, Chris, thinking what you'll do if either outcome becomes reality? Do you think to yourself, if I win, I want to do this next, and if I lose, I want to do this next? So my question really is, well, what would a loss to Coyle meant for your career?
I don't really like to think like that. I usually think, like, whatever my next fight is, that's the end of my timeline. I think that, on June 1st, that is the last thing I can think of. I don't even know what Sunday looks like on June 2nd.
I like that.
Because in my mind, I'm 100% focused for fight night. But whatever happens afterwards, I go from assess from there. Honestly, I mean, Coyle, like you said, levels wise, he's probably, a few levels below me, but I knew that he was going to come in at Tommy Coyle at 110%. He was himself plus more, because I knew this was a huge opportunity for him. I knew this was his last hurrah. I knew that he was going to be he's a very dangerous guy anyway. But I knew that he was going to come in fully prepared. His coaching staff and Jamie Moore, they're phenomenal. So I knew their game plan was going to be good. This was a very real fight. It was a very dangerous fight, and it was a fight that got me excited to train, because Tommy Coyle is a dangerous foe. But honestly, I was thinking if I had lost that fight, then I probably would have hung it up as well. Because if I can't beat the Tommy Coyles of the world, then I can't really look to vie for a world title. And that's I want to be world champion. I'm not here just to get fights.
I really like that answer. I like the way you say you don't even envision the Sunday. It's all about June the 1st. That's a good mentality to have. And yeah, you're right. I mean, Tommy Coyle, for him, that was like his world title shot. The fight itself, my assessment of it anyway, was that Coyle started pretty well. It seemed to take you a little while to warm into it, and you got caught with a shot that, if anything, seemed to actually wake you up, because after Coyle tried to swarm you and you didn't go anywhere, you actually managed to totally up your game. You showed your class, and you went on to dominate the rest of the fight until that corner stoppage. Is that fair to say, Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, other than that those 2 punches that hit me in the second round, the fight was pretty awesome. It was a pretty good performance from my part. But yeah, I had coffee with Tommy and his team the next day, and Tommy himself said, he's like, honestly, I think catching you did more damage to me than it did to you. He's like, because I hit you, and he's like, I went forward, I threw a million punches, and you stayed so calm that by the time we were done, you were in better position. You took right over. And that's true. I mean, I knew I wasn't, he didn't hurt me bad. I got buzzed. I got hit with a good shot. I had to cover up and be careful for a little bit, but I was completely aware of what was going on. I knew that I was going to get him. And then as soon as we got past that, and towards the end of the second round, I was already winning the round, and I was already in control again, and I knew that I was going to get him eventually.
And the shot that I'm talking about, which seemed to wake you up, was really made a big deal of by the UK commentary team on Sky. They were shouting that you were pretty much out on your feet. However, watching the replay, I thought that they really overreacted, because you actually didn't seem that badly hurt at all. In all honesty, Chris, how hurt were you from that shot?
I wasn't, like I said. He buzzed me. He got hit with a good shot. Came right hand over the jab, and then that punch didn't. That's actually the
You're cracking
left
up
hook.
Real bad, Chris.
I put it a little too soon trying to catch him in the middle.
You're cracking
and,
up pretty
I got
bad,
hit with
Chris.
the left hook, and that. Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, those they weren't huge shots. I got caught clean a little bit, and like you said, I was a little cold early on. I wasn't as loose. those punches maybe had a little bit more effect than they should have, because I got hit with big shots later that literally I walked right through. So they didn't really cause a lot of damage. Like I said, I wasn't worried at all. Neither was my corner.
And you had Tommy down in round 4, a real good body shot. He got back up, and credit to him for sticking in there to the 8th round. However, at the end of the 8th, that was when Tommy Coyle's trainer, Jamie Moore, stopped the fight. Obviously, it was a hard decision for him to make, and Tommy was clearly pleading with him in the corner not to stop the fight. But certainly over here in the UK, people believe Jamie Moore did the right thing. And looking back now, do you believe he was right to stop the fight, which I know kind of stopped you from probably scoring an eye-catching knockout?
It was the perfect time for them, for their team. I was walking back to the corner, like, next round, like you said, I was going to set up a perfect knockout. I was actually doing that already. I was looking. If you watch that 7th and 8th round, you see me stalking and looking for right hands. I'm looking for big right hands over the top, because I was looking to do a picturesque knockout for that shot. But I just had to keep peppering away, keep taking his energy away to try and set up that shot. He's a super, super tough guy. He's always going to go out on his shield. But his corner and his people, they care about him. They care about his future. And Tommy agreed with it as well. The stoppage was right. It was the right time. Any longer, and who knows what kind of damage could have been done, because I was not slowing down at all.
No, for sure. Very well said. And like you mentioned, the following day, you guys met up and discussed the fight. I mean, that's a really cool thing to do. What did you guys tell each other there?
We're sportsmen. This is sport. You got two guys. We're trying to kill each other that night on fight night. There's no doubt about that. There was no love lost on fight night, but that's because we're true professionals. We've been around this game long enough. We understand the stakes. We understand that this is a dangerous game. We understand that people die with what they do, and we understand that this is how we both make a living. So we went out there. We were fully prepared. We've been training hard to fight each other for months. This is the way boxing is supposed to be. You're supposed to know who you're fighting long in advance. You're supposed to train properly for them. And then once that final bell's over and the decision or the result is over, you're both sportsmen. You're both in the same sport. You both shared something very intimate and something very real together. There's no reason to have any animosity at that point, especially with the way the result was. It was final. It was complete. Everybody understood what it was. There's no reason to trash talk or try and get over anymore. At that point, it's, hey man, great night, great job. I'm a fan of you. You're a fan of me, and we're now friends. Let's go on with the rest of our lives.
No, that's brilliant to hear. And obviously, Tommy's got a good reputation being a good guy. Did you happen to see the thing what he did when he got back to the UK?
I saw on his Instagram earlier today with the bus, the Tommy Coyle boxing bus, or no, maybe he's talking about the other. You tell me, fill me in. I got a lot going on.
No worries. So basically, a local homeless shelter in his hometown actually got vandalized. Some people broke into the facility. They stole some money that had been raised, and basically they had to close for a little while. And when Tommy found out about it, he asked if he were to be able to get someone over there within like an hour to fix the damage, and he would himself replace the stolen money. Would they be able to open the same day so that homeless people didn't lose out on having somewhere to go? And they said yeah, and he went straight over there, sorted it out for him. He was still jet lagged. He still had loads of bruises on his face, so he's certainly one of boxing's good guys.
Oh, that's incredible, and I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised at all from spending the time with Tommy and his family and his team. They're just stand-up guys, all class, and that just shows that's above and beyond. What a good man, top class.
Absolutely. And did you hang around to see Joshua versus Ruiz from ringside, Tommy? If so, what? Not Tommy, Chris. If so, what was your reaction?
I knew that was a dangerous fight. I know Andy Ruiz. I know he's a very talented guy. The casual fans may look at his body and may look at his work and not think much of him, but that's stupid. The guy is very, very talented. He has quick hands, which was the thing that stood out in my mind as when the first fight was announced, the difference between him and Miller. Miller is a big guy. He's a strong guy. He's a 300-pound plus guy. He's very, very tall. He's very, very physical. He throws a lot of punches, but his hand speed is not like Andy's. His power is not like Andy's. Andy has power and hand speed, and that night on June 1st, he had the will and desire to win. He was going to give it his all no matter what. Even when he got dropped, he got right back up and then knocked down Joshua, which is a huge testament. Getting up off the campus to win a fight, which I've done before, is extremely difficult to do, especially at a high level like that. So it just shows you that what I thought about him in that fight being a very dangerous opponent is absolutely true.
And you're right when you say people look at his physique and they're too quick to write a guy off. And it's funny because even now we're reading things, I'm sure you've seen it as well, people are saying, I mean, look at this fat guy beat Joshua. When they have a rematch, Joshua's surely going to beat him. Like, people are not even giving him a chance in a rematch. And I'm thinking if he was completely ripped, if he looked like Joshua's body, we'd be saying, hey, he's going to probably beat Joshua again. I mean, it's weird the way people think, right?
It's silly, this is not a physique contest. This is not an endurance contest. Exactly. This is a skill sport. People just don't understand. There's levels of skill, there's levels of talent. Boxing is the most difficult sport in the world. And it is entirely, I mean, it's a number of factors, but there's so many factors that are involved, and looks is probably the least important. So it's just, I'm a huge fan of Joshua. If I make a joke all the time, if I was playing a video game and I was going to make the heavyweight champion of the world, I would make Anthony Joshua. He would look and sound exactly like that guy. He would fight like that guy. He's incredible. I'm a huge fan, but give it up for Andy Ruiz and for the underdogs out there and the guys that have tons of heart and make up for anything that they're lacking. But I take nothing away from his skill set. I take nothing away from Andy Ruiz as a fighter. He is obviously a phenomenal athlete. And I think that we need to kind of educate people a little bit more. Our boxing fans need to be more educated on what this sport is all about. It's not a physique contest, obviously. We've got all types of different types of body types, especially in the heavyweight division. And now our heavyweight champion looks like Andy Ruiz, and he deserves it.
He certainly does deserve it. Chris, back onto yourself a second here. Have you got your next fight date just yet? Perhaps a month in mind? Any indication at all?
No, nothing yet. My team is working on that. We're still pretty fresh from Saturday night. There's been a lot of talks of potential, title fights, and that fight being a title eliminator. I know how boxing is. I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when I see some paperwork. So, I'm just kind of just coming down off the victory now and waiting for the next thing. And, I'm mentally kind of not checking out, but changing hats per se, kind of give myself a little bit of time off, let my boxing personality rest and wear some of the other hats that I like to wear in between fights and reset my mind. But I like to take a little bit, a few weeks off and then get right back to work. I always like to stay fit, and hopefully we can lock down a fight and I can get a proper 2-month training camp where I can go away and I can bring my whole team. Haven't had a camp like that since, I don't even know. It's been years now. So it'll be good to have a proper camp with my full squad with me for 8 to 10 weeks and get focused on a single night and go out there and make dreams come true again.
Fingers crossed for you, my friend. And last time we spoke, you gave me your take on Crawford versus Khan. It was just before that. Obviously, it proved to be Crawford's night, but I want to get your take on Pacquiao versus Thurman, a brilliant fight that's going to be happening soon.
I'm actually very excited about that fight. I think that in terms of the welterweight landscape, the guys that I would be okay seeing Pacquiao fight, Thurman's probably one of those guys. Thurman, Danny Garcia, I can see those fights making sense. I don't want to see Pacquiao in with the Spencers or the Crawfords. Even a guy like Sean Porter, I think is just too physical, too young, too big. We have to honor our champions. Pacquiao is a living legend. We can't just be feeding him to the young wolves. But I think Thurman, him being out of the ring and being inactive as he has been over the past 2.5 years, even though he's younger and undefeated and has power, I think it's a very viable fight, and it's a winnable fight for Manny Pacquiao, especially the Pacquiao who's fighting now. He's a different guy than he was a bunch of years ago, 5 years ago, like when I fought him. He doesn't move the same way. His reactions aren't the same, but he's still very dangerous. I think his power is still there. I think that his ability to pull the trigger is still there. He doesn't have that same footwork. He's a little bit more of a plotter and a puncher that we saw in the Matisse fight and the Broner fight, but still a very, very dangerous guy. And you can see from a boxer watching Manny Pacquiao, I don't see him missing a beat in terms of dodging punches or being fearful of power. He's still in there. He still sees things. He's still able to pull the trigger. Still a very, very dangerous guy. Can still beat a lot of the top welterweights. And I would not be surprised if he beat Keith Thurman on the night.
Yeah, I love the interesting factor that the young guy Thurman is coming off not a real fantastic display in his last fight. And then you've got the older guy, Pacquiao, coming off of a few good performances now in a row. So it's real intriguing. And just before we let you
go... the timing is great.
Yeah, no, the timing
No, I was just saying the timing of the fight is great.
It really is. And just before I let you go, Chris, have you got any closing words just to our listeners at all before we let you go, my friend?
Yeah, like I said, I'm switching hats a little bit. So outside of my boxing, my book comes out. Actually, came out today, June the 4th. It's called The Fighter's Kitchen. It's 100 recipes. There's some nutrition information. There's meal plans in there. It is nutrition and recipe that I have been using for my own career for a number of years. They're actual recipes that I cook for myself all the time and post on my social media. They're recipes that I use with other fighters that I help with their nutrition. So anybody who has been asking for recipes and secrets, it's now available. It's on Amazon. It's in bookstores all over. We're going to be doing some book signing tours. We're starting here in the States, and then hopefully we're going to head up over to England and London and possibly Italy and some other places as well. So getting that book tour going. So if anybody wants to grab that book, I really appreciate it.
Excellent. Real exciting times. Well, Chris, like I say, it's always a pleasure speaking with you. Congrats once again on your win over Tommy Coyle. Thank you so much for your time, and we hope to speak again very soon.
My pleasure as always. Let me know when you need me, and I'll be there.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the news part of the show. Ayaz, what you got?
Joseph Parker has signed with Matchroom Boxing.
Yeah, I mean... It's kind of ironic, really. I believe he signed last Friday, so it was literally the day before the Joshua Ruiz fight, and he is probably the best man to ask who he believed would win the fight beforehand. You know, he's fought both guys. I believe he's the only guy to have fought both guys. You know, he had a close-ish fight with Joshua. He didn't completely get embarrassed. I think it was probably like a 7-5 kind of fight, something like that. And people forget that, but yeah, he had a real close fight, another 7-5 kind of fight with Andy Ruiz Jr. So, you know, it was a strange signing. Then, of course, like we said earlier on, his win now over Ruiz looks unbelievable. I mean, thanks to Anthony Joshua, his win looks unbelievable now over Andy Ruiz Jr. But yeah, good signing. There's lots and lots of good fights. You know, we kind of... Well, I don't forget it, but a lot of people will forget it. He almost had Dillian Whyte out of there in the last round. You know, he seemed to leave a little bit too much in the tank that night. He didn't empty it all. So there's many big fights. I'd like to see the Whyte rematch, even though I think Whyte should really be pushed on for world titles now. He's done enough. He's fighting Oscar Rivas. If he beats him, don't put another hard fight in front of him. Just let him fight for a belt. He certainly deserves it. But, you know, if that doesn't happen, then, of course, you know, that's a great fight, the rematch there. Joseph Parker against Chisora, that's a fight we'd like to see. I think he wins that one so easily, Parker. There's many big fights. I could go on and on. I mean, him against Andy Ruiz Jr. in a rematch. Obviously, that's not going to happen straight away, but that's a good fight again. And there's many big fights. Michael Hunter, one of them, I'm sure. Loads and loads and loads. I could name them all day, but it's a good signing for Matchroom.
Yes. The next news is that Tony Harrison vs. Jamal Charlo 2 is off due to a ligament injury to Tony Harrison, which has ruled him out for 10 weeks.
Yeah, Tony Harrison, friend of the show. Sad to see because, you know, he won the first fight. It was a little bit controversial. A lot of people didn't agree with it. But then going into the second fight, all the build-up, it seems like he's actually managed to get inside Charlo's head. And Charlo, you know, people were saying, hey, he doesn't look right at these press conferences. He needs reassurance from Leonard Ellaby. All kinds of things like that, and I really was looking forward to this way more than the first fight. So it's a shame that he's had to be ruled out with an injury. It gives Jamel Charlo, it is, more time to kind of gather his mental state, if you like, and you know, it should still be a good fight should it get rescheduled. I know that the fight's off, but the card still goes ahead. I believe Regondo was on the undercard. I think he still fights on that night against his opponent. Can't remember who it was, but maybe he'll be headlining. But I'm sure the show still will go on without that fight. But obviously it's a blow there.
Eddie Hearn has announced that Andy Ruiz Jr. vs. Anthony Joshua rematch clause has been triggered.
Yeah, the decision got made while they were all still in New York. I believe a meeting took place between Eddie Hearn, Anthony Joshua, and Rob McCracken, and they've all sat down and come to the decision that the rematch is what they want immediately. I think they talked about November or October in the UK. It's a weird one, really, because where they're going to put that fight, you'd expect it to be Wembley or something, but in those cold months there, it's probably going to rain, so I don't know what they're going to do. I'm guessing it's going to have to be outdoors, though. It's a big fight. It's going to be huge. It's going to be bigger, you'd expect, than the first fight. So it's a weird one, but it's happening in the UK. I think Joshua is going to need that home advantage that he didn't have in the first fight here, and it should be a good one. But it's certainly not a given. I mean, the bookies need to make Andy Ruiz quite a not so much a big underdog, because people will be lumping money on him now. And like I said to Chris Algieri earlier on, the physique is what's tricking everyone. I mean, if he was built like Frank Bruno, we'd be saying, no, he'll win. But just because he's out of shape, he looks out of shape anyway, on the naked eye, people think, well, it's a fluke, if you like, and people are making excuses. He can't do it again. I wouldn't be so sure. I think he's going to be, like I say, going into that second fight knowing he can hurt Joshua. Joshua goes into the second fight knowing he can be hurt by Ruiz. There's clouds of doubt there. And Ruiz will be better prepared mentally and physically, you'd have to say, for that rematch. So that is a close fight. I wouldn't really want to put any money down on that one at all.
And finally, Teofimo Lopez will face Masayoshi Nakatani in an IBF lightweight final eliminator on July 19th at the MGM National Harbour.
Yes, Nakatani 18-0 with 12 knockouts, an undefeated fighter from Japan. I mean, you look at his resume, and I am just looking at his resume, I'll have it be known. Not overly impressive. I mean, I think it's, a little bit inflated. His best win was probably against... To be honest, it's hard to find the best win. I mean, it's probably over Ricky Sismundo or Cry Setafon. I mean, not going to pose any kind of threat to Teofimo Lopez. Lopez probably knocks him out early, and it just sets up. It's probably going to be an early night's work, so it just sets up the fight after that to pretty much be a quick one. We had Teofimo Lopez on this show, and he said that he wants to move up to 140 in 2020. So this fight here, what was the date for it, as you said? Was it July? So I believe he'll probably make quick work of it, and then he'll be able to box for a 135 world title before the year's up, and then win, lose or draw, he can still do what he was doing. The plan still can go ahead. He can move up to 140. So that's pretty much a given, that fight there. I believe Teofimo will be fighting. I believe it's the winner of Comey and Beltran. He'll fight the winner of that fight before the year's out. So. Good fights for Teofimo, but this one I believe is a knockover job.
Yep, and that's it for the news.
Thank you very much, Ayaz. Right, moving over to the preview part of the show, and by the way, do not miss it. I'm gonna do an impression later on at the very end of the show. I'm gonna throw in one of my pre-recorded impressions. I'm gonna just spoil it here. I'm gonna do Demetrius Andrade at the very end of the show. I did a bit of 50 Cent last week. I'm gonna do Demetrius Andrade at the end of the show, so listen out for that impression there. Don't go anywhere. But yeah, the preview part of the show now. We're going to start here at the Turning Stone Resort and Casino in Verona, New York, USA. One fight to mention that tops the bill: Zab Judah. He returns to action, 44-9. This will be his 54th fight. He fights for the vacant NABA Super-Lightweight title against Cletus Seldin, 23-1. That is a weird fight, because Cletus Seldin's a real big puncher. Zab obviously being at the real tail end of his career. I mean, he would, in his prime, have been able to outbox and probably stop Cletus Seldin. But, it certainly makes it interesting, because Cletus Seldin's not a great boxer. We saw that when he took on Yves Ulysse. He got completely manhandled, really, when it came down to boxing skills. But like I say, Zab being long in the tooth and certainly over the hill, it makes for an interesting fight. If he can't outbox him, if he runs out of steam, he probably gets knocked out, sadly, and I like Zab, actually. But that's it for that one. Moving over to Spain at the Bilbao Arena. Two interesting fights over here. Firstly, a little shout out to Andoni Gargo, a man that I believe Lee Selby knocked out on the Haybellew 1 undercard, I think. But anyway, he's a decent fighter, 21-3 with 3 draws. He fights for the vacant EBU European featherweight title against Jesus Sanchez, who's 10-1. That's a 12-rounder there. But more importantly, And more interestingly, Kerman Leharaga, 27-1, coming off that one loss to David Avanesian. Dare we mention Avanesian and Josh Kelly on the same show? Not talking about fighting each other. But yeah, he takes on Luis Solis, who's 25-9 with 4 draws. That's a 10-rounder there, no belt on the line. It would look to me there that Leharaga has decided to pass up on his rematch clause, unlike AJ with Ruiz. It looks like he doesn't want that rematch clause, that immediate rematch clause with David Avanesian. So that goes to show, I mean, that's pretty shocking, actually, from Leharaga. He goes back to the Bilbao Arena there. All the best to him. Seems like a decent guy, actually. Moving out now to York Hall at Bethnal Green in London, United Kingdom. 1 or 2 fights over here to mention. Just the one, really. Friend of the show, Jake Ball, 12-2. Obviously, you know, a friend of the show. He's been on a few times. Coming off that bad loss, though, to Craig Richards. He's in an 8-rounder against journeyman Daryl Sharp, who's 5-53. Moving out now to the Renault Sparks Convention Center in Reno, I should say, in Nevada, USA. Friend of the show, Oscar Valdez, 25-0. He's got a pet alligator called Steve. He puts his WBO World Featherweight title on the line against Jason Sanchez, 14-0. You know, I've got to say this about Oscar Valdez. He's an exciting fighter because he can be dropped and he can also drop people. But he's had a little bit of a kind of stagnated, you know, run of defences at times. I mean, he won the belt back in 2016. He beat Matias Rueda, who was 26-0. He beat him. He stopped him in the second round, became world champion. Then, of course, he took on Osawa, the guy from Japan. Then he went on to take not the O. He'd already lost Mariaga. That was actually a good fight, to be fair. But then this is what I'm talking about. This little patch here. Maybe I'm being too harsh, but he took on Genesis Savania, the Filipino boxer. Had a hard fight with him. I believe he's Filipino. Had a hard fight with him, and then he took on Scott Quigg. That was a complete war. And then last time out, he took on the Italian Carmine Tomason, and he didn't look that great, to be honest. I mean, he was way too good for Tomason, but he didn't look that great. And I mean, maybe I'm being harsh. It's his third out of his last 4 fights. 3 of the guys he's boxed have been undefeated, and he's beaten 2 of them. He's taken on his third this Saturday. So maybe I'm being a bit harsh, but he hasn't really boxed the big names. I mean, Scott Quigg gave him a tough fight. I mean, he completely got outclassed, but it was still a tough, gritty, bloody fight. And then, yeah, I suppose I give him credit for fighting Mariaga, but aside from that, I mean, I don't know. There's other fights I'd like to see him have. There's unifications. I know that politics gets in the way, but I just feel like, you know, him against Selby, I would have liked to have seen that. I know the pair have sparred a few times. Him against Frampton, but, you know, even him against Warrington. I want these fights to happen, so we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait, certainly, for those ones. But, yeah, all the best to Oscar Valdez. Moving out now to the final bill to mention at the Madison Square Garden in New York, USA. 7 days on from the upset between Joshua and Ruiz. The ring gets cleared out for, well, I'm just going to mention the main event here because the undercard's pretty poor, to be honest. Gennady Golovkin Ayaz, 38-1 with 1 draw, coming off the loss to Saul Canelo Alvarez. He takes on Steve Rose, the Canadian, 19-0, 12-round contest. Ayaz, talk to me.
This is going to be a first fight. I mean, this is going to be a first Gennady Golovkin's fight under his new trainer Jonathan Banks.
True.
I mean, I think it's going to be really. I think we're going to see a new Gennady Golovkin. I think we're going to see more for I think we're going to see a more for defensive Gennady Golovkin. But if I'm going to go in and win, I'm going to go with Golovkin to win by knockout.
Okay, interesting. I mean, I'm not quite sure that I agree that we're going to see a new Golovkin. I feel like he's kind of fought the same way the whole time. I mean, he's been with Abel Sanchez for all that time, but I don't think he's, you know, I think he's kind of too old to completely change his style. But, you know, the faults of him being slightly more defensive, I'm not sure that Steve Rose is going to bring that out of him. I'm not sure we're going to get to see that because I don't think Steve Rose is going to be able to hang with Golovkin. I mean, I know Golovkin's 37. He only just turned 37 in April. And also, he just turned 35, Steve Rose, in April. So there's only 2 years between the guys. I mean, Steve Rose obviously doesn't have all those miles on the clock. Like I say, 19-0. He had a decent little amateur career. never really beat anyone of note, but he was a decent amateur from Canada, like I say, but no real names. I mean, you look at his resume, Keandre Leatherwood, he went the distance with him in his last fight. You know, he won the vacant USBA middleweight title. I remember Leatherwood being was it stopped by Andy Lee? No, I think Andy Lee went the distance with him. I think he got stopped by Caleb Truax, but he's not a fantastic fighter. I mean, I will say this guy did get a win against Damon Nicholson. That there is actually a good win, because Damon Nicholson can certainly punch. Barely any of his fights go the distance, and this guy beat him on a split decision over 8. And he had Nicholson down in the first round, so that's the standout really, but obviously it doesn't match anything that Gennady Golovkin's done. So yeah, I believe Gennady Golovkin will stop him, but we're not even doing any predictions this week, because sadly it's a bit of a rubbish weekend actually. There's no mega fights. I think Golovkin, everyone's going to pick him to beat Steve Rose by knockout, and obviously the other big card, if you like, is probably that Oscar Valdez card, and we don't know much about Jason Sanchez, even though he's undefeated. We're all going to probably pick Valdez to win by knockout, so there's no point just doing these predictions for the sake of it, and we're going to probably return next week with the predictions. I believe there's some big fights happening next weekend, but that's about it though for the preview part of the show. Remember, do not tune out at all. You need to listen, hang around and listen for the Demetrius Andrade impression, and yeah, just before we wrap up the preview part of the show, the last thing to do is to welcome our second and final guest on this week's podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the reigning WBA Continental Light-Heavyweight Champion. It is, of course, Mr. Craig Richards. Craig, welcome back on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure having you on,
Thank
Craig.
you for having me back on.
It's always a pleasure having you on, my man.
Thank you, man.
So we last spoke in February. It was just after your incredible win over Jake Paul. Definitely the best performance of your career. Now you've got your next fight date lined up, June 21st, against the undefeated Andre Sterling. What do we know about Andre, Craig?
We know he's going to come, he's going to bring it. We know he's a good, credible opponent, unbeaten, beat Ricky Summers, beat the English champ. So we know he's in good stead, and it's just for me to go out there and show my class and show how good I am, and, you know, where I'm destined to be, you know. He's been calling the fight on. You know me, I don't duck and dive, no challenges. So I said, cool, we'll get it on. You know, it weren't part of my plans, but sometimes things like that happen in boxing.
And you're both coming off your career best wins. I was there for your win over Bull. I was also there for Sterling's win over Ricky Summers. And by the way, going into the Summers fight, I was looking at both their records, both of them not really known as big punchers. And I remember thinking, hey, Ricky Summers gave Frank Buglioni quite a lot to think about. And I remember he had a great jab. And I expected him to beat Sterling, especially when he was able to drop Sterling in the second round. But Sterling ended up winning pretty wide. I mean, it was quite shocking. I wasn't really watching the fight. I was kind of chatting to some of the media there, but I remember thinking, wow, that's a wide card, seeing as he got dropped. Did you watch the fight at all?
I personally think I did watch it back after, you know, had a look in at it, because obviously after this fight was made, I didn't really get to watch most of it at the time. I watched a bit of it, because obviously I tuned into the James DeGale card at the time, saw a bit of the end of it, obviously I saw the highlights and got dropped. I looked back over the fight, and yeah, I don't know. I didn't really agree too much on the scorecard, but that's here nor there. That's you know, you can't really pinpoint. You got the win at the end of the day, and he moves on in his career, you know. So no point disputing the rounds and how much you thought he or she won. At the end of the day, he got the nod, and he moves on.
And I read somewhere that the winner of this will fight Josh Buatsi next. I'm guessing it's the final eliminator for the British.
I'm not sure if Buatsi will have the title or not at the time, but it's a final British eliminator for the British title. Obviously, the winner becomes mandatory.
Okay.
So, you know.
Okay. Obviously, Buatsi, the holder of the belt at the minute. How much do you rate Buatsi, Craig? I mean, what have you made of his opponents that he's boxed thus far? Have you had the chance to spar him, perhaps?
Yeah, I think Buatsi's a good fighter. I think he's a good light heavyweight. He's obviously got good pedigree. He's done well in the amateurs. He's come through. He's beaten everyone in front of him. He's done everything asked of him. So, yeah, he's a good light heavyweight, good credible opponent, good credible light heavyweight. Yeah.
You ever had the chance to
spar
him?
I do think he's a good fighter. Yeah, we sparred rounds.
Okay.
We've got some good spars.
Okay. I was saying it earlier on in the show that there's so many guys domestically at light heavyweight. I mean, it's quite staggering. I actually had a little look. I count 16 names that are all kind of around about the same level for now. I'm not saying that none of you can push on, obviously, but I'm saying it's such a rich division domestically, like way richer than I thought. It's a brilliant division to be in at that domestic level right now, you know?
Well, 100%. It's a big division full of a lot of names. A lot of people ain't mixing it, though, you know, it's a bit of a shame. But there's so much good names and good talents in there, and it was just like a process of elimination, really. And it's the same reason why I said before when we done the last interview why I took the Jake fight, because he was considered one of the best in the division. And it's a process of elimination. I had to get him out of there and move on, you know, and prove myself in the division to be what I believe I'm the best. And I've got to go on and keep executing that and showing that. And I've heard people say, like, obviously, if any of the other light heavyweights top 10 has done something like what I did to Jake Paul, people say he's past domestic level. But, you know, obviously in this game, I don't think obviously I get a fair shake of how I perform, the challenges I've took on. If I beat Sterling, it will be the 4th domestic champion that I've beat. And I just don't think I'd get enough credit. But, you know, sometimes it goes like that. You just got to keep going out there, not worrying about that, and keep executing your job until you get to your final goal, and then worry what people say, you know?
No, I agree, Craig. I felt like you've been severely overlooked, underrated, you know, throughout your career. I think that win over Ball, though, was just like, wow. Like, absolutely no one can look at that and say, that's not impressive, because that was incredible. And I think obviously a win here against Sterling, especially in good fashion, you really got some momentum behind you now. So I think a win over over Sterling just pushes you even more, really. I don't think people can keep forgetting about you, mentioning those top guys at light heavy, especially in Britain. A guy that was kind of criticised for not fighting, you know, not mixing it up at British level was Anthony Yarde. A lot of people said, hey, he's never ever going to sign to fight Kovalev. You're crazy if you think he is. And he obviously did sign. It now looks like Kovalev doesn't seem to want the fight. I'm not quite sure what's going on there, but should the fight happen, how do you see it unfolding?
It's boxing. It's boxing. It's Anthony can punch, Kovalev can punch, but obviously Kovalev's got the bigger pedigree. He's been at a higher level. Obviously Anthony's not boxed anyone at that level, but it's a chance for him to prove himself and show what he's made of. So it's a chance for everyone to gauge to see how good Anthony is. Is he at that level? Is he not there yet? It's a good opportunity for him to display. It's a good gauge to see where everyone's at, really. It's a very good fight, and you can never write anyone off. You know, look at Ruiz fight the other day. Everyone thought it was going to be a blowover for Josh. It wasn't a blowover, so, you know, anything could happen in boxing.
Tell me about that fight. What did you make of Joshua Ruiz? What was your reaction? Did you stay up?
Yeah, I stayed up, silly. But, you know, it was a shocker. You know, you wake up the next day, you feel like you're dreaming. You can't believe that happened, you know. But everyone's saying that Ruiz has just got his number, which Ruiz is a very good fighter, but I just believe that Josh on the rematch will come out there and blow him out. But I believe that Joshua I really do believe he wasn't himself. Well, it's silly to say he wasn't himself, but you can see there was stuff wrong with him. Even the way he done the ring walk, the way he was in the ring, the way he was looking around. When he got in the ring, he was looking up at the screens. Even when they called his name, he looked surprised, like, oh, me. And he's looking up at the screens, looking around in the crowd. He just looked confused. He just didn't seem right from the off. He was asking weird questions in the corner that no one's ever asked him heard. He was saying to Rob at the time, why do I feel like this? Yeah, you could tell he wasn't right.
He looked pretty right, though, when he put Ruiz down for the first time in Ruiz's career, though.
Yeah, yeah and no. He put him down nicely, but then the exchanges afterwards, I believe Josh is usually a little bit more explosive than that. I don't know, Mike. Obviously, there's no excuses. He's been a man about it. He ain't making excuses, so who are we to make excuses for him? Exactly. He took it like a man, but and fair play to him, and shows the spirit of a champ. But my personal is not as a boxer, as a fan's point, watching boxing, it just didn't seem him the AJ I've seen previously watching him.
No, fair enough. Who are your top three heavyweights in order of 1 to 3, Craig? Who's the best?
I don't have a top three.
I know who your top three is, but I just don't know what the order is. Everyone's pretty much got the same top three, right?
I think everyone has got the similar top three. There's always the argument of the top four with Hill, AJ, Wilder, and Fury. Obviously, everyone was arguing who was the better two out of Wilder and AJ because that was the two belt holders. So that's why this fight kind of shooken up the division a little bit. Currently now AJ's lost. Everyone's saying, well, Fury's the best. I can't see how that works out. Obviously, on paper, achievement-wise and everything, everyone's going to have to say that at the moment Wilder is, because he's obviously still the champion, and you can't say Ruiz is now better than Wilder because he's beat AJ, do you know what I'm saying? So, paper-wise, Wilder, but there's always just arguments. You can't say anyone's the best because some people say, I think Fury beat Wilder. Some people think, I think Wilder Fury didn't make the count. Some people are saying, how comes Fury ain't fighting Dillian? Some people can say, there's just so much politics to it. I feel like at the moment that heavyweight's in the air and it's all for grabs, to be honest.
Fair enough. It's good to get that out of you. It's good to hear your expanded answer on that, Craig. Just before we let you go, any closing words at all for our listeners before we let you go, my friend?
Just keep tuning, keep supporting, love the support, and don't sleep on me.
Don't sleep on Craig. That's a mistake a few guys have made and been made to pay. Craig, for tickets, people can come to you, right?
Yeah, come to me. Message me either on my Instagram. As I'm from tomorrow, it'll be up on my website. So either way, message me, come down support. Also, if you want to get t-shirts and you buy a ticket, they go cheaper for ticket buyers. So yeah, we work it.
Exactly. So if you buy a ticket, you get a t-shirt for an extra £10. Otherwise, if you want a t-shirt alone, it's $15. But please, everyone that's listening to this, check the t-shirts out. I'm going to get mine. They look brilliant. All right, listen, Craig, it's always great catching up, my friend. You know that. Best of luck for the 21st of June, Craig, and we'll catch up sometime after.
Well, thank you. Speak to you soon, bro.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 190 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Ayaz Sumra has been Ayaz Sumra. A big thank you to our two guests on this week's show, the former WBO Super-Lightweight World Champion Chris Algieri and the reigning WBA Continental Light-Heavyweight Champion Craig Richards. No predictions this week. One piece of news has broken since recording the show. Eddie Hearn has announced a unification fight between Maurice Hooker and Jose Ramirez for their WBO and WBC titles. That's a good fight, obviously, because it's the two other belts that aren't included in the World Boxing Super Series. So hopefully the winner of that fight that I've just mentioned will take on the winner of Prograis and Taylor. That'd be excellent to see a undisputed champion once again at 140. We'd like to thank you all, of course, for tuning in to this week's podcast. Tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. Thank you all for listening. And lastly, just to wrap things up, I haven't forgotten, here is my impression of Demetrius Andrade.
Yeah, I know. Demetrius Andrade, the Dunkin' Donuts Center in Providence, Billy Joe Saunders, he's taking all these nasal sprays. He doesn't want to fight me. It's me again.